Despite lower fertility rates in developed countries, the world's population continues to grow, mostly in the planet's poorest countries. In less than 2 years, the global population will reach 7 billion, according to the Population Reference Bureau, a non-profit group in Washington, D.C. Carl Haub co-authored its report.
At the moment, the world is adding 1 billion population every 12 years. And it took us until 1800, however many millions of years that humans have been walking the earth, to reach our first billion.
In sub-Saharan Africa, birth rates are high and mortality rates have slowed. Campaigns against killers like HIV/AIDS and malaria are producing results. Africa will add 1 billion people in the next 40 years, according to the report.
A woman in Niger, at today's birth rate, would give birth to, on average, 7.4 children.
Already, 80% of the world's children live in Africa and Asia. This large, non-productive segment of the population needs services, schools, health centers, and eventually jobs.
To have a large number of youth who have no education or barely literate is not an advantage. And that, I think, is one of the big challenges facing developing countries.
John F. May is a demographer at the World Bank. He says in Africa, only 10 out of 100 children will finish secondary school. 1% will go to college.
I think the strength of a country is not linked to the number of people, but it's linked to the number of educated people, people who are in good health, who can have productive life.
On the other hand, developed nations have lower birth rates. Europe and East Asia have the lowest. Taiwan has the lowest birth rate in the world, an average of 1 child per woman. Higher education and the migration to cities are factors for lower birth rates, May says. China and India both have over 1 billion people, the largest populations in the world. They will soon switch places.
Sometime in the 2020s, which is not that far off, India will become the largest country in population in the world, surpassing China.
Food production continues to be a challenge. However, Hobbs says much of the hunger in the world is not because food is lacking, but because people are impoverished.
Half of the population of the developing world lives in what the World Bank defines as extreme poverty, less than $2 per day. And that is the group that's growing faster.
Demographers agree that population growth, especially in Africa, will fuel migration to urban areas. As a result, cities could become even more massive, difficult to manage, with large pockets of poverty and slums. For producer Zulema Palacio, I'm Carol Pearson, VOA News.
Had the sense that I'd been hearing about, as all us baby boomers had been, about the population explosion all our lives. But yeah, hearing these sort of conflicting tales, and so I was really interested just to look into it and to talk to the scientists who study population about it. I started out wanting to treat it just as a science problem. Like you, I come from a science journalism background, and so I set out to find some of these people. And what I came away with was an understanding that there is no one population story. We live in incredibly interesting times. There are these two conflicting stories going on. The population boom is still going on worldwide, and there are countries that are still suffering from the immediacy of that. But then there are other countries that have, like Europe and most of the developed countries, that have come out the other side. And so using it, but it turns out that there's one scheme that demographers use that sort of makes sense of all this idea of the demographic transition, and that's what I tried to get across in the article, that the countries are all going through a similar evolution, but at different time periods.
Early on in .earth, I did a piece called "The Population Cluster Bomb," that it basically saw the world as the impacts of population growth, and the phenomenon is ultimately local, really, even though in the 60s there was this concept of the global population explosion. But and that piece showed that, as Jesse Ausubel put it from Rockefeller University, there are imploders and exploders.
Right.
And what that creates is a lot of flow, or potential flow, and like immigration. And I think you dealt a little bit with that aspect.
One of the interviews that didn't make it into the piece was with a demographer in Kerala in southern India, and I'd spent a couple of days with this guy, and he'd helped arrange some interviews and talking about the particular situation of Kerala, which is the state.